Visit Sailboat.com for all your project supplies, tools, and instructions. This sailboat's cockpit looks fantastic with new curved cockpit cushions with piping and on the deck a beautiful floor covering fabric called Straightedge. You can find many styles and colors of luxury flooring from both Infinity and Straightedge brands at the Sailboat website. In this tutorial video, we'll show you how to pattern, cut, and bind the edges of this flooring for any flooring cover application you may have. Ours is a boat's cockpit flooring. Don't throw away the leftovers. It can be used for table placemats and also linings for closets and drawers. The Straightedge flooring that Sailboat stocks comes with a soft, 100% thermoplastic polyfin backing, which is comfortable to walk on and doesn't soak up water. The TPO backing is extremely durable in demanding conditions and will not damage surfaces that it rests upon. It's now time to get started. The first step is patterning the area that you want to cover the flooring in.
We have the Sailboat patterning material and I've cut it to size so that it's obviously bigger than our cockpit floor here, but I've made it two sections even though we are going to have flooring go back there as well. So we're going to start with this section, and you can see I've roughly cut it so that it just stops at the stanchion here. I'm sorry, at the helm station. And then what I want to do here at the corners, since this is not going to lay flat, is I want to kind of put a slit at the corner, not going too deep, and that'll help it to take that corners, because we want the corners to be nice and tight. But right now I'm just going to mark exactly where those edges fall. So just like this, here's the corner. Now anything that's not straight, we'll obviously straighten it with a straight edge when we take it to the table.
The pattern must be oversized, but having too much fabric makes it very difficult to lay it flat, so cut away as much as possible while still having enough to cover your flooring, and cut slits around any obstacles or turns, and your flooring will eventually go flat, as you'll see here. As we discussed, we're patterning with two separate sections of pattern material, so we're going to have to go back to the junction where they're going to have to be joined together and mark a line or some sort of match-up marks.
I'm going to put a line here. This is just a random line. It's not going to be a cut line, but that's going to give me the ability to lay this one that's a separate piece on top, and then I can mark directly on that line knowing where this is going to lay. So right there, and then I have a line going this way. We're going to actually go around this hardware, probably with a little bit of an arch. Now I'm also going to put a line here. This is probably where I want my cut line, which is, I got to do it on this one, probably right here, the shorter one, don't you think, Seth?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for some of the short distance here, we are going to have a slit because we have to get around this hardware, so we are going to cut on that. But I also need to mark match-up marks, so I'm just going to do this, and then that way they'll know that those are in line with each other. Then we're going to continue this line going around. So there's the edge. So we want to stay probably a ½ inch in. Move ½ inch in. And the same thing over here. So now we've marked the pattern and it's all the way up against the edges. What we're going to do is we're going to take the patterns inside to our table. We're going to cut them to size, the pattern that is, and then bring the patterns back out and make modifications before we cut the flooring, which costs a little bit of money.
We're going to be taking our pattern inside, cutting it to size, and then we'll bring it back out to our space and check to be sure we're happy.
So here are the two patterns we have, and we just need to match them up. I'm stepping on some of them. There we go. Just like we had it on the boat. So that line lines up like that, and then these line up like that. Okay, so now I'm going to tape it together. Of course, Okay, so I'm just using some packing tape and just putting it on there, and I put some there on the other side with the line on top. So there we are. Okay, so now I have a straight edge. Remember I said that I was going to use a straight edge here because obviously my marks aren't perfect. So I'm going to go across here like that, and I'm going to do that for this as well to make sure that it's perfectly straight. And we'll cut on the straight lines with scissors. So for the cut, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a straight line right there. This will be where we can separate the flooring to put it around the steering console. So obviously, if you know the line's not supposed to be straight, don't straighten it. In other words, if it has shape, but we know that this should be straight, I think. We'll take it out the boat and confirm it. For the round part, we can't do that, so if there's any jaggedness down at the bottom, we're going to try to straighten it out as we go. So here, anything that looks like, obviously I just overdrew, I'll just try to do my best job to cut it nice and even. We're going to draw a line back here because that's where that stanchion is, and we're going to straighten this line and this line. Those were not. Okay, so we have our pattern cut, and now we're going to test it out by positioning it. It's so much better without all the extra.
The fit is good.
So
If you plan on sewing binding around the outside edges, cut down the pattern size by a 1/4 inch around all sides. If no binding is being used, do not do that.
So check the fit. It's really a perfect fit. I don't have to modify anything. Now we are going to put a curve over here so that we don't have to do a 90-degree turn with binding. If you weren't going to do binding, it'd probably be fine like that. And then we are going to reduce the size of it by a 1/4 inch all around the perimeter, the outside perimeter. Probably won't do anything with this cutout for the helm station.
If you plan on using binding, usually you have to cut the pattern down a little bit because the binding adds to the overall size.
So we're going to cut the flooring a 1/4 inch smaller all around the outer perimeter. Then we're going to bring the flooring back out here to test fit it again before we sew on the binding, because we don't want to sew on binding and find out that it's still too big. So a 1/4 inch everywhere except for back here. We don't want this to be over the edge at all. So we're going to do a 1/2 inch here. So I'm just using the clear acrylic ruler, and we're going to recut that. This we're going to still just do a 1/4 inch because it just runs into that stanchion. So I'm doing a 1/4 inch there, 1/2 inch here, and then 1/4 inch everywhere else. Now how do you do a 1/4 inch for the shapely areas? I'll show you that in a second here. Here's a side that has some shape. So use a clear acrylic ruler. There are other means to do this, but line it up and then just move it as you mark. And that takes the 1/4 inch away, as you can see. Look at that, nice. So here's that 1/2 inch that we're cutting off, but everywhere else it's a 1/4 inch. And I've marked around the perimeter, and we're just going to cut it to that size. To round these 90-degree corners to make it easier for sewing on binding, I'm just going to use a cone of thread, and we're just going to round it like that on both these corners. And we'll cut that out.
Now that we're happy with our pattern, it's time to cut the flooring to the correct size using that pattern.
This is our flooring material. This one brand is called Chilowich. We carry other brands as well. We have obviously the flooring facing the tabletop, which means the pattern has to be so outside surface is facing down, obviously, because otherwise it'll be not the right direction. I've got a silver marker, and I'm just going to mark around the perimeter. We're going to cut on the inside of the silver line. So we're going to go all the way around doing this. And notice how I have the pattern laying straight along the fabric, and that's because if you look at this, it has a weave, and it almost, I mean, they're not really stripes, but they're almost like stripes. So I don't want those going askew. I want those to be straight. That's why the pattern's going that direction. Now, if you don't want to mark, you can just simply cut like I'm doing, just right beside the pattern with scissors. This stuff cuts pretty easily with a good pair of scissors. And look at that, it's exactly the right size. So you've got a couple options. You can mark and then cut, or you can just cut right beside the pattern, but make sure you use some sort of a weighted sandbag or books on top of it to keep it from moving around.
For any inside holes like the center console, we recommend marking it and then cutting it out. On the pattern here, this is where we desired the cut to be, but why not move the cut all the way to the corner of the center cutout? And so that's what we're doing. We're just using a straight edge and we're moving that cut to that location. That cut has to be there because we have to get around all that hardware.
So here we are with the flooring in place without the binding, and it actually looks phenomenal without even the binding on it. We're still going to put binding on it, we think. But if you didn't want to do the binding step, you could skip that. And I think it looks gorgeous.
If you've opted to put binding on, that's what this chapter's about. It's an optional step. Let's show you how to do it.
This is 1 1/4 inch Sattler bias binding, and I put it in a 1 1/4 inch Sailboat swing away binder here. And we're going to bind the edges of this flooring with it. So I'm going to put it in here, and I've already positioned everything exactly where I want it. I want that stitch to be about, 1/8 inch away from this fold. And we do have some curves here. This is the slit that goes around the helm station. So we want to start at the slit so we don't have any overlapping seams here. So I'm going to put this fabric in, and you've got to make sure that it's pushed into the exiting point of this binder here. So let's start right here and put your foot down, and I'm going to roll the balance wheel by hand here, and I'm going to hold the trailing threads, and I'm going to do a little bit of reversing here, and I'm going to try to make it look pretty because everybody's going to see this. So 2 stitches, and then I'm going to go a couple stitches in back, but you want to do a little bit of heavy reversing like we did. Okay, so now push this in as you go and concentrate on that more than anything else. Now sometimes this will get caught on the ends down here, so you got to pay attention because this has got a rubber pad on it. So just be watching this point and this point of the entry. And we are going around a curve right now. It's not too hard. And before you go any further, you should always check to make sure that your stitch looks good on the underside. And as you can see, it looks beautiful. Okay. And it's a wise idea to pick a coordinating thread color with the Sattler 1 1/4 inch binding that you're using. If you need to make adjustments, bury your needle by hand. Like right now, the fabric is stuck over here on Seth's chair. Okay, I'm just going to keep sewing around like this until we get to a transition, and then I'll show you what we do when we get to a corner that has to take a turn. Sometimes when the fabric gets to be too bulky, just fold it up on the table, and that makes it a little bit easier for you to sew it. Okay, before we get to this corner here, stop sewing and bury your needle by rolling your balance wheel by hand so you don't lose your spot. So to sew this almost 90-degree corner, what I like to do is take my scissors, and I don't want to go deeper than obviously where the binding is going to cover, and I do a miter at the corner, so I release a little bit of this, and then I go over here that's perpendicular to this edge over here, and I make a little slit there as well, and then I do it parallel or perpendicular, I'm sorry, to this edge as well, just going in a little bit, so right there, and that basically opens up that edge. You can see that this kind of, well, I'll be able to spread it straight. Now it's a little bit difficult, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the Worker Bee Power Pack system down to its slowest speed. I want to go super slow here to make sure that I can pull this straight when I get to it. Okay, so now it's going to start hitting the binder, and what I need to do is I need to pull this out. kind of like that. It almost becomes straight. It's stiff fabric, so you gotta, that's why I'm doing this really slow here. Oh, I'm not buried. Okay, so let's see, I've kinked this up greatly, and now now it's almost straight. And I am kind of pushing the assembly in as well, because it doesn't want to feed very well here because of all this bulk. Okay, I'm past that straightaway. Now I'm going to bury the needle, and I'm going to straighten this out so I get it in the feed of the binder. I can turn up the worker bee now and continue to sew. And I'll show you what that side looks like here. Bury the needle. So what you're going to get at this turn is you're going to get a wrinkle in the fabric. It's a 90-degree turn, so it's going to sit like that, but that is a great way to do a 90-degree turn. This can either be tucked down or under. I'm going to obviously tuck it under like that, but that's a great 90-degree. So when we get to a corner like this, watch what we do. We want to sew all the way to that corner and stop just shy of the edge with the needle buried. So right about there, that's pretty good. So that looks like what, a 1/4 of an inch or so. I could probably go one more stitch. Nah, I think it was actually good the way it was. Got it. So we probably have like a 1/4 inch or so. So the needle's buried, coming up. I'm going to lift my foot. I'm going to pivot on that needle and rotate my assembly around until it's in the binder, and then make sure my needle's straight. I'm going to look at my needle because sometimes you can wiggle this and so forth, because if it's deflected you'll get a skip stitch. And then lower my foot. Don't forget to lower your foot, and sew. And there's what that corner looks like. It looks good. We're coming to this rounded corner, and because we rounded it, it should make it easier. So just push the fabric in there, and I'm going to even hold the binder a little bit and roll the assembly around as you go. I'm going to turn down the worker bee so we get slow speed control. Power and slow speed is what you get with the Sailboat worker bee power pack system. Beautiful. And we do reversing at the end. At the ends, what I like to do is just take a hot knife. You can take a wood burning tool or soldering gun too, and just cut off the excess. This will prevent the unraveling of the binding. We're using the Straightedge hot knife to do that. There we go.
Use this flooring, especially any leftovers from your floor project, for placemats, liners, rugs, and more.
We're going to make some placemats of the excess flooring that we have, and it makes great placemats because of the rubber backing. Now usually a placemat is 19 by 14, but that'd be a little bit big for a boat like this. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to do probably 12 inches in height and maybe about 16 inches in length, and I think that'll look good. Okay, so to make placemats, we're going to try to have the pattern go up and down like that.
You can use this flooring, the leftovers especially, as liners for pantries, drawers, cupboards, closets.
I actually used some of the leftovers under my sinks in the cabinet area, in the kitchen and in the bathrooms of my house, and it worked phenomenally. So there's our 16. So let's make sure that we are making it perfectly perpendicular to that bottom line. Okay, we're going to cut this out carefully with scissors because we want this to be straight since it is a placemat.
On the back side of the Chilowich flooring is a pad that feels like rubber, but it's actually a thermoplastic polyolefin. Most placemats don't have a backing like this, so they slide around on tabletops, but not with the Chilowich flooring from Sailboat. That backing is tough and it doesn't soak up any liquids. Here we measured a drawer and cut liners for the drawer on the Sailboat out of the Chilowich flooring material that was left over. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and also subscribe and click the bell to be notified of new tutorial videos when they become available. The materials and parts list is included in the description below. Be sure to check that out. I'm Eric Grant, and from all of us here at Sailboat, thanks for watching.